Samson? Seems like there's more to gain than lose at this point. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, and I typed the first thing that came to mind. You're on your way down, you pathetic piece of shit.
Alex?
Said Bree. I was already deleting it, but at least I got a laugh from them. I tried something else. I typed, "What do you want?" Then I sat back and stared at the screen. Simple. To the point.
Go ahead, Bree said. That's the right question.
So I hit send. Chapter 97. The next order of business was pretty clear to all three of us. We got the cyber unit at the FBI involved with the new site. Our contact now was Anjali Patel, a tiny woman no more than 5 feet, with steely gray eyes. Kitz's replacement. I wondered how much time Anjali had spent thinking about the fact that someone was killed doing the job she now had. We met her in the second-floor cubicle at the Hoover Building. She had the new DCAK site up on 2 screens and was navigating from her laptop while she talked to us.
Here's the situation, guys. There's no instance of DCAK anywhere in his code, including the meta tags, which are what search engines look at. That probably explains why no one else has found it so far.
As long as it stays that way, we'd like to keep it up online, Bree said. We've got a potential communication going, and we don't want to blow it unless we absolutely have to. That established, Patel moved on. A few minutes later, she looked up from her work.
Here's the other thing, guys. This site is something of a hybrid. Most of the content was posted using a normal file transfer program, but 2 of the images, here and here,
she used her mouse to circle the photos of Kitz and his killer,
were moblogged.
Before we could ask, she explained,
posted to the web using a mobile phone.
Is that easier to trace? I asked, hoping that it would be, but doubting it.
In this particular case, yes.
She slid a piece of paper around for us to see. It was a Verizon statement with a billing address. In Babb, Montana.
Maybe he's finally made a mistake. Does the name Tyler Bell mean anything to you?
Anjali asked.
Should it?
Said Bree.
Not necessarily. Just thought I'd throw it out there. The phone DCAK used was likely stolen.
Patel started to turn back to her computer. Hold on a second, I said. I was looking at the Verizon statement. That last name, Bell. I had a case a while ago when I was still with the Bureau. Happened out in L.A. It was coded Mary Smith, or Mary Mary.
Sure, I know it, Patel nodded. The Hollywood murders, actors, producers, and such. That's when I first heard of you, actually.
The perp on that case was a Bell. Michael Bell. He had killed several innocent people, and then nearly killed me. How fast can you find out about known living relatives of Michael Bell's? I asked Anjali. I know that he has daughters.
Shouldn't be hard. And we should get someone over to this Tyler Bell's house in Montana. See if he's home, Bree contributed.
Why do I think he won't be? Samson said. Bree was already dialing her cell phone.
Maybe because Tyler Bell is here in Washington.
Anjali set us up at a few empty desks, and Samson and I each picked up a different thread. He quickly found 5 Tyler Bells listed in the general D.C. area, 3 of them right in the city. It was a long shot that he was listed here, but these leads would have to be checked out. I did a run through the Uniform Crime Report. There was no record of Tyler Bell or Ty Bell, at least for the last 5 years. That's as far as I got before Bree came back over, still holding her phone against one ear.
I've got Montana State Police on the line. Guess who disappeared 3 months ago? Hint, hint. Last name rhymes with hell.
Part 4. Collision Course. Chapter 98.
Now this was glorious. Truly. The last place Kyle Craig expected to be, ever again, was on the Champs-Élysées. But here he was in Paris, probably his favorite city in the world. Top 3 for sure, with Rome and Amsterdam, maybe London. He supposed it was that intense yearning he had for freedom that he was feeling now, the need to do the unexpected, to follow his every whim, ultimately to kill again, to torture, to express his age in new ways. Over the last few nights he'd dined at some of the finest restaurants in the world. Taillevent, Le Cinq inside the Georges V, right next to the Prince de Galles where he was staying. None of the meals cost him less than 400 euros, about 5 bills American, but he didn't care, not in the least. He had more than enough money, and wasn't that what vacations were about? Get away from the job, the rat race, all the killing. Give himself time to think, to plan. The Prince de Galles was a good spot for him in all regards. It was on the scenic Avenue Georges V, just a few blocks from the Champs-Élysées. The hotel was gorgeous. Art Deco for the most part, gilded, with the most beautiful chandeliers everywhere you looked. But he particularly enjoyed the Regency bar, which was English in style, lots of leather, dark wood, and velvet. Elvis Presley had once stayed at the Prince de Galles, and now so had Kyle Craig. There had been museums to visit in the mornings. The Musée d'Orsay and Musée de l'Orangerie were his 2 favorites, the Impressionists. Maybe he'd go to the Louvre today as well, but just to see the Mona Lisa. And he'd taken long walks along the Seine, where he'd done a lot of thinking, and some more planning. There was one decision he'd made for sure. He wasn't going to let DCAK have Alex Cross as his trophy. No. Alex Cross belonged to him, and so did the Cross family. Nana, Janelle, Damon, and little Alex Jr. That had always been the plan. He'd obsessed on it for years. And maybe, just maybe, he'd do a little wet work before he left Paris. That was his art, which was just as beautiful and important as anything created by the so-called old masters. He was a new master, wasn't he? Perfect for this barbaric age. Right for the times. No one had ever done it better. Certainly not DCAK. He spotted a pretty young woman in a tight grey blouse, black skirt, and high boots, with long hair that was almost auburn in color. She was sweeping the sidewalk in front of a small art gallery. Back and forth, very efficient woman, and so attractive to be behind a broom. So Kyle stopped at the gallery, went inside, and she left him to look around for the first few minutes. So independent, so very French. No wonder he adored them so. Finally, she appeared at his elbow. "You wish some help?" Kyle smiled, and his eyes went bright. He spoke to her in French. "You are a detective. My clothes, my haircut, they gave me away." "No, it was your shoes, actually," she said. He laughed. "You just say that, to be perverse." Finally she laughed too. "Or maybe humorous?" "This isn't funny," he told her then. It wasn't. He took over an hour to kill her. And then he used her broom, and not in the usual way, not to sweep, and handle first. And then a fabulous parting meal at l'Atelier de Joël Robuchon. Ah, Paris, a miracle city.
Chapter 99. This Montana connection was a big break in the case. With any luck, the one we needed. Information on Tyler Bell began to pile up quickly, He was, in fact, the brother of Michael Bell, and actually the more elusive character of the two. While Michael was becoming a minor player in Hollywood circles, Tyler made his living as a river guide and general handyman. He operated out of a Rocky Mountain cabin he had built himself. His reputation around Babb, Montana, population 560, was that of a quiet, nice-enough fellow who wasn't unsociable, but mostly liked to be alone. There was no mention of a steady female companion. More to the point, Tyler had inherited nearly $1 million from his brother's estate, sat on it for 6 months, then closed the account and received several dozen cashier's checks in varying amounts on the last day anyone saw him out in Montana. Now what was that all about? And where was Tyler Bell right now? Bree, Sampson, Anjali, and I had a conference call going with the Sheriff's Department in Glacier County, along with a senior agent named Gail Snyder in the FBI's Salt Lake City field office. John Abate, a senior agent in charge of DCAK here in Washington, had joined us as well. "What's the status of your missing persons case?" Abate asked into the speakerphone.
"The file's certainly open, but not what I'd call active. This bloke's either dead or doesn't want to be found."
The Montana deputy on the case, Steve Mills, had an unexpected English accent. What was with that? "Snyder, what have you got?" asked Abate in a curt, take-charge voice. "Tell us everything you can about Bell." "Far as we can tell, he was pretty much cut off from the world. His Verizon account was prepaid through December, including minutes he hasn't used, for whatever reason. And there's one credit card, a Visa, totally dormant."
"Well, he did have $1 million or so at his disposal," Sampson said.
"He took only a few things from his place," Mills contributed.
"His phone, wallet, some clothes. Not that there was so much to leave behind. He lived rather simply, off the grid and all."
"He doesn't sound like a cell phone person to me," I said.
"Except when the alternative is having wires strung out to your property," Mills said. "I doubt he ever used the cell much, though."
"Well, someone used it." Patel looked down at the phone report in front of her. "Yesterday, 2:10 p.m. "Someone?" Gail Snyder asked. "Do you have reason to believe it wasn't him?" "Not at all. We just don't have any hard evidence that it was him," said Bree.
"Mighty big coincidence if it wasn't," Mills said. "Don't you think?"
"Agreed."
Patel sounded a little testy. They weren't keeping up with her. She'd also been working for more hours than she could count.
"What else about Bell?" Bree asked. "How soon can we get a picture of him?" "Here you go," Snyder said. "I just sent it your way."
With a few keystrokes, Patel brought up an image of Tyler Bell's Montana driver's license. She flipped it over to the conference room screen. I remembered meeting his brother in California, and how my first impression had been lumberjack, but in a California rock and roll sort of way, like some lost member of the Eagles. Tyler looked like the real thing. His brown hair and full beard were shaggy, but not unkempt. The license stats put him at 6'3", 220 pounds. "What do you think, Bree? Recognize him? Could he be your AP reporter?" She squinted at the license and took her time before answering.
"The way he can change his looks? Sure, it's possible. The reporter was a big man, maybe 6'3".
"What does your gut say?"
Here she didn't pause. "It tells me we just found the creep we've been looking for. And like I said before, he's going down."
Chapter 100. As soon as word about a possible suspect named Tyler Bell reached the chief of police's office, a reply boomeranged back to us. We were told to go public with the information immediately. Easy to say, a whole lot harder to do. Certainly we had to tell the press something. If another murder came down and we hadn't shared what we knew, it wouldn't matter why we had made the decision to withhold. The damage control would become a huge time suck, and the investigation would suffer badly.
On the other hand,